Have a cupcake. I forgot to announce this in class. How did you find out? I realized as I walked over here. Career web thing. Yeah, good, good, good. So, all right, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is the Scholarship for Service information session. You probably already knew that. If you're here, please take a cupcake. If there's too much cupcake, there's a knife. You can cut pieces of a cupcake. I'm Clay. I'm a professor in computer science, and I am PI, which is primary investigator, I guess. PI. I'm in charge of the program, what it comes down to. Um, if you are a rising first year student, if you're a freshman right now, then you are not eligible to apply this year. I'm sorry, I didn't make it clear in advance. As a consolation, you can take a cupcake and go, or you can stay and listen. It'll be like 20, 25 minutes and you'll be better prepared for next year. So here's what I want to talk about in the order that I want to talk about it, which is what is the scholarship program? How does it work? Who's eligible? How do I get in on it? And what are the odds? However, when I do it in this order, nobody's happy and they all ask me questions anyway. So let me reverse the order a little bit and put the stuff that you want to know up front, probably, because if you're here, you probably know a little about the program. What are the odds and who is eligible? Then I'll get into what is the scholarship program, how does it work, and how do you get in on it, okay? I want to say one thing up front, nothing changes much from year to year, so if you watched one of last year's videos, you know most of it. One big thing changed though, and I have to exercise a word of caution, which is if you haven't, everything that I'm saying is based on past experience. We're in year like 7 or 8 of the program, so I've been doing this a while, have a pretty good handle on it. But if you haven't noticed, there's a new administration and they are doing things pretty radically differently without really telling anybody in advance. So as a warning, things could change from what I'm saying unexpectedly. And if so, I don't know what to expect and they're out of my control. So everything I'm telling you is essentially based on what has happened in the past. My hope is that it will continue similarly into the future as well. I also try to be very transparent about the program, so I'm gonna answer your questions as best I can. Honestly, there's no hidden stuff here. I just don't know what's gonna happen. So the first thing you're probably interested in is knowing what the odds are. Like if you apply, what are your chances of getting into the program? And the answer is it's very competitive. I don't have a fixed number to give you. And the reason I don't have a fixed number is because it varies from year to year. It varies on who applies, how much support they apply for, because some people are applying for 1 year or 2 years. And then how many applicants we get in the pool. Some year we have more than others. So the chances of getting in vary, but typically it's between 5 and 20%. 5% tends to be at the end of we work on a 5-year cycle, and the 5% tends to be in like the last year when we only have a few slots left. So I expect it'll be maybe 12 to 20%. One thing I do want to mention, and this is a little bit of an oddity, we plan to accept about 8 or 9 students this year, right? Depends on who's applying for what and how much it costs, because we also balance cost. Um, and this is across all the academic programs. 2 or 3 of the students we plan to accept were for 1 year, so people who are like rising juniors who will be a senior. Recent guidance that came out like a year or two ago asks us not to accept students for 1 year anymore because it causes problems. However, our plan when we wrote and submitted the grant was to have 1-year students. So this guidance not to have students for a year and our plan, which said we're going to have students for a year, are kind of in conflict with each other. I expect that because it was in our plan and we had 1-year students admitted for 1 year in their senior year in the past, we will be able to do so again, but I can't guarantee it. Again, I don't know for sure what will happen. So we might, instead of admitting 8 or 9 students, 2 or 3 for a year, we might admit like 6 or 7 who are all 2-year, depending on how it works out. Okay, so that's where we're coming from. Who is eligible? You have to be a U.S. citizen or green card holder. This is absolutely non-negotiable. It is the law that Congress passed authorizing this program has that language. So if you are not a U.S. citizen or green card holder, we cannot admit you. In part, this is for you all here. You all are probably all American citizens, but people do listen to the recording because I posted on YouTube, and this comes as bad news for them. And I'm sorry, I don't have any control over that. We also have an in-person requirement. We do not support entirely online students. Again, if you're listening to the recording, we are unable to support you unless you're in an in-person program. The other thing is you have to be earning a degree. It cannot be a certificate. So it must be a degree program, not just a certificate program. You must be a full-time student, and full-time student means that you're carrying the full course load working towards your degree. The only exception to this is in your final year, in your final semester, I should say, if you have fewer courses to take to finish your degree than like what is normally a full-time load, we can sometimes arrange for you to be a lower load, but you have to be taking classes full-time. You must be in a program that teaches adequate cybersecurity skills to get federal employment. We are the scholarship program. If you're listening to this, I am only running the scholarship. I do not administer any degree program. I do not admit students in a degree program. I only admit them into the scholarship, and then they must also, and you must also, get admitted to an academic program. And we'll talk a little bit more about which ones we support for sure in a bit. We can support students full-time who are taking full-time class loads who are also working. This is a change to the program since it started a number of years ago. We're in our first year now where we have students who are working full-time and taking full-time classes. Mostly these are graduate students who take classes in the evening. One thing about this though is if you are working full-time, one of the benefits that the program gives you is a stipend, a living stipend. So you don't have to work, you can study full-time. If you are working full-time, your stipend is reduced depending on how much you are working. So, okay, that may not apply in here. And in general, if you're working full-time, you probably want to keep your salary because the stipend, while adequate for living, is not as good as you're likely getting paid. Okay, so, and the stipend, you can keep advancing in your career if you're working and stuff like that. The only problem is if you're working full-time is you do have to handle full-time school while working full-time as well. And that can be challenging. People can handle it, but it can be challenging. Okay. All right. So that's most of the stuff people want to know up front. Let me tell you a little bit more about the program. This program was started because the government had a problem. And the problem was that people with cybersecurity skills are very valued in the marketplace, and it is expensive to hire cybersecurity people. Because of this, people would tend not to go work for the government. Why would you go work for the government for, say, $90,000 a year if you could go work for Google for $200,000 a year, right? Totally doesn't make sense to do that. And this led to a shortage of government workers. So the solution for the government wasn't, as you might think, to raise salaries because government jobs are like pretty highly regulated and there's like pay grades and all sorts of stuff. So they couldn't really pay more. So instead, what they decided to do was offer this scholarship. And the scholarship is really nice because you can sort of think of it as prepaying some of the salary ahead of time, right? If you get a scholarship for a year or two and it's $90,000 to $100,000 a year, then that's like $200,000 by the time you get out of school. And then you add that to your government salary and it works out to like what you would have gotten at Google over 2 years, right? But they're sort of spreading it out and they're paying their tuition and stuff like that. So the result is this program, the Scholarship for Service program. This program has been growing. I believe now there's about 120 schools across the country, give or take 10, maybe up to 130. I've lost the exact count of the number. And these schools have a really wide range. I mean, there's a wide range of programs that do this. There are some community college, there are some small state schools, large state schools, and then there's more selective universities like where, hey, come in, have a cupcake. All of these schools produce very different students, okay? Very different students, as you can imagine, because different schools at different levels get different students and teach them different levels of skills. And this is not a problem. It's actually a good thing. It's a good thing because when you talk about cybersecurity, it's like talking about medicine, right? If you want to go, do you go and just get like a medicine degree and then a medicine job? No, like you have some sort of specialty, right? You're a doctor, a nurse anesthetist, an orderly, a respiratory therapist, like physical therapist. You can just go on and on with all the different medical careers you can have in medicine, and the training for each is different. It's the same, it's the same in cybersecurity, right? Like in cybersecurity, there are a wide variety of roles and there are a wide variety of skills that are needed for roles, and different people coming out of different schools have different skill sets suited for different jobs, right? So some of the jobs are things like system administrator. There has to be somebody to do the care and feeding and security of updated computers. Cyber defender, they come up with like security plans and look for intrusions and stuff like that. A forensic analyst is when something goes wrong, they investigate to figure out what went wrong. Sometimes it's to hold somebody responsible, sometimes it's to keep it from happening again. As you move up kind of the technical skill ladder, you get up to people who are software engineers, they do programming, system analysts who do kind of large scale system development. Above that, and again, in terms of complexity and play, you get program managers who oversee programs for security, and they often have a lot of the other people working for them. Program auditors who go around and make sure everything is going correctly and everybody else is doing their jobs well. You have cyber policy and strategy planners, which is very policy oriented. But at some point, we need policy to direct everything else. So you can kind of see there's this huge range of skills. The students who come out of Georgetown tend towards more of these skills. Some people are software engineers and uh, and do other stuff, but a lot of them are kind of more policy management track. Okay, come out of here. Now these jobs and many, many more are in a publication called NIST SP 800-181 Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. You can look through there and it will give you an idea of all the different jobs that the government recognizes in terms of cybersecurity, and for each one, what skills are needed. Okay, so there's just a lot of stuff in there. So the scholarship for service turns out all people for all these jobs and more, right? Given the breadth of schools that we have. So how does this work? If you join the program and you're in the program, you get full support. And when I say full support, I mean we pay for everything, literally everything. It is a lot of money. We pay all your tuition and all your required fees. We pay a stipend for living, which it covers you being able to afford a place to live, like rent, and eat, because apparently those things are important, right? The stipend right now is $27,000 a year, and this is the 9-month academic year only for undergraduates and $37,000 for grad students. It's possible that it will go up. Every once in a while they do an inflation adjustment. I'm not sure if it'll happen this year. It happened a year or two ago. So you get health insurance if you want it and you're not covered under some other plan. We'll pay for health insurance. Every year there are $6,000 that you get to spend on textbooks and supplies, like material you need for class, and for professional development. When we talk about professional development, what we are talking about is you get to choose. If you know what you're going to do and you know what field you want to get into, you get to choose what to do with this. You can buy books. If you're going to do a certification, you get certification training courses. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. One thing I do want to mention up front is there is a job fair requirement once a year in January, right at the beginning of the semester, recently falling on the first days of class, which is awkward. There is a job fair. The job fair occurs in a small town called Washington, D.C. We are quite fortunate because our travel is much easier than people who are coming from like Alaska and Hawaii, right? We'd like Uber over in the morning and then back in the afternoon. But you have to go to the job fair. Okay, you must go to the job fair. What must you do? You got to go to the job fair. Okay, it, you can use professional development money to attend conferences. People go to like security conferences, Black Hat, DEF CON. You can use it for technical training. A lot of people pay for, right now the rage among our students is SANS courses. SANS is like a very high profile technical instruction. Their courses are really expensive though. So I keep trying to get them to do like cheaper courses, but more of them, but they want the SANS course. So, and it works. And this is pretty cool. You can buy one reasonable computer during the time you're in the program. And reasonable is like a laptop or something that's suitable for classes. I've had students come in and like try and tell me that they want to buy a $22,000 server. I'm just, but anyway, push it. So at Georgetown, the total value of the scholarship in a year for grad students is about $85,000 a year. And for undergrads, it's currently on the order of $100,000 a year. Is that a lot of money? Yes. Yes, it is. It is a very valuable scholarship, and I remember it. Now, one of the things that we do, because we're an expensive school and the budget is awarded by dollar value rather than like number of slots, is we limit students in the program to only 2 years of support maximum. In theory, the program would allow us to do 3 years of support, but we have chosen on purpose to limit it to 2 years of support so that more students get the opportunity to do it instead of like fewer for longer. And that's like the choice we made. $100,000 a year is a lot. It's enough to make up pretty much the salary difference between working in industry in a cybersecurity position, and working in the government for a cybersecurity position at a lower salary. The cool thing about government, though, is that everything isn't about money. Do you know who's really doing cybersecurity work, like the hardcore cool stuff? It's the government. Like the people in government are involved essentially in an ongoing Cold War with international adversaries where they're defending and breaking into each other's computers all the time. Okay. So there's all sorts of stuff you get to do in government that you do not get to do in industry. And I'll tell you, if you choose to leave government later, particularly if you have like a security clearance, that's when you get the big salary. Like you can get paid very well then. Okay. Now, if you do get 2 years of support, like to junior and senior years when we do it, you are required to get an internship over the summer of your junior year. Typically, this is paid. Okay. The whole point of doing the internship is it gets you out, it gets you working the agencies, it gets you exposed to government, and very often I'd say maybe like as a wild guess, 50%, maybe a little less, 40% of the people who get an internship go back to work at the place they get their internship as their full-time job. So, because you already have the security clearance, you know the organization and things like that. So you have to get an internship over the summer. Yes, it is. Yeah. So one of the thing is though, I'm not sure if you're working full-time because we do support full-time students who are working. It's not clear to me if you're working full-time, if your full-time job counts as an internship. We will find out this summer. This is the first year we are supporting students who are working full-time, and we'll figure out what it is. I suspect it will. It doesn't make sense that if you're working full-time, you have to go to an internship and come back, but we'll see. Okay. Now, that's a lot of money and a lot of benefits. In exchange, you work for the government in a cybersecurity position for as long as you were supported, minimum 1 year. One year we had a student who only wanted 1 semester of support. He got a semester of support and he went to government and he's actually still there. He really enjoys it. So you're going to work there at least as long as you were supported. So if you're supported for 1 year, you have to work at least 1 year. If you're supported for 2 years, you have to work for 2 years. There is also a stick, right? This is all carrots so far. What do you think the stick is? If you don't get a job in government, it turns into a loan and you have to pay it back. Okay. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to be paid back. Okay. Now, paying it back would kind of be bad for you, but it may not be bad if Google or someone decides to pay it off. And this is the thing that PIs like me at schools across the country are most worried about, that we have a great student, they come through, they, get up, and then Google is like, oh, hey, we'll hire you. And you're like, oh, I owe them $200,000. And Google will be like, okay, that's like what, a nanosecond's worth of profit for us. So we'll just pay it off, right? So this would be terrible. It would be absolutely, completely, horribly terrible for the program if you did this. It would make me sad. And here is why. This scholarship is merit-based. We are trying to find the very best candidates we can to bring into the program to go into government. But it does allow us to bring students to Georgetown who otherwise might not be able to afford to come. Okay? Particularly at the graduate level, but occasionally at the undergraduate level too, there are people who are admitted to the scholarship program, and it makes a huge difference in their life because, as I'm sure you all know, it's really expensive and they are incurring a lot of debt. And I'll just say as an aside, this is why we as professors do this. Like in running this program, it's an administrative headache. It doesn't change my life. I don't get paid enough for like, I own a private jet or anything like that, right? Like it pays me a little bit, but we do it because then we get to see students who wouldn't otherwise be able to come to Georgetown, and that seems valuable to us. So the problem with students taking the Google money and running is every so often the grant comes up for renewal. And when it does, our renewal is based on our success in placing students into government and them completing their service. We are a small enough program that over the term of the grant, even one student not completing and switching to a loan could kill our program here. So we take it really, really seriously. We're trying to run this program so students can come to Georgetown. If a student gets in and like runs off to Google, that's not bad for them, but it's terrible for people who would otherwise have come behind them, right? We look at it as a moral obligation. If you're going to commit to being in the program, you're not doing it just for yourself, but for all the people who come after you as well. Does that make sense? Because we're doing this so that people can come here. And so if you take the loan, that possibly means that other people can't do it. And we take, like I said, we take this really seriously, and we will during the application process talk to you about this a lot, because this is a pretty core thing of what we believe. So if you accept a loan, you damage the program and you keep others from coming. So that's bad. Okay. Nobody's going to do that. Yeah. Down. Okay. Other things you have to do. You have to take enough cybersecurity classes to make yourself employable. That is actually not very different. Like I said before, we are a scholarship, not a degree program. We will pay for you to take some program at Georgetown. You have to apply, if you're not already here, to a degree program at the same time you're applying to the scholarship. Okay, so if you apply and you want the scholarship, you apply to the degree program, you apply to the scholarship at the same time. The classes that are required really differ by program. There's a lot of programs across campus. If you're in computer science, you're going to need to take the network security class and information assurance class. You should take a crypto class if possible. Okay? It doesn't always work out with the schedule, but we try to schedule the other two every year so it works out. STIA, any STIA students here? If you're in STIA students, you need to take enough computer science background. So you get up to network security and information assurance. So it's almost like a computer science minor. So it helps if you've taken computer science 1 and 2 along the way already, okay? In the SSP program, any SSP students, security studies? Okay, it depends, like the security studies program is a grad program. The courses that are offered there vary from time to time. So we just do the best we can every year, but we recommend they have a hands-on security course, and we recommend people take that if possible. We have the Masters in Cybersecurity Risk Management program. This has been around a few years. You're all good. If you take that program, you are all good. It just teaches you everything you need to know. And then there's a bunch of other programs too that are, some are intelligence related graduate programs or not. And for other programs, it really depends. And the thing about running the scholarship program is we don't know about all the other programs across campus. Like there's enterprising faculty who create programs and some go away. So we sort of allow ourselves to discover new programs when applicants ask, hey, how about this program? So in essence, though, we can support any program that teaches enough cybersecurity to lead to employment. Some programs have more than others. I will admit that if you are interested in another program, you should email me and check. I've had a couple of people asking about the Masters in Foreign Service with like the STIA. There's like a graduate STIA program. That's a possibility. It doesn't have that many courses. When we consider the course that people are being admitted to, we also try and consider like how employable that would make them. So some programs that have less cybersecurity, we could probably support, but we might prefer to support candidates in other programs first. So it might be that if you're applying for a master's that has some cybersecurity component, but not a lot, your application would not be favored as heavily. If you are listening to this, though, please do not apply if you want to go to a program that I haven't listed here without emailing me first, because I want to approve, like just save everybody the time of reviewing an application if we're not going to be able to support the program anyway. All right, other requirements, and these might change a little over the course of the thing. When you're here, we do have a cybersecurity seminar. Students meet every couple of weeks. It's pretty chill right now. Every 2 to 3 weeks during the academic year, we get together. It's in part to just give you some fundamentals about stuff that you need to know, to check in on you, to make sure everything that's going well, and to get you, make sure your job search is going well. There's also a communications seminar, and this is actually a 1 credit hour class that you would take for the first 2 semesters. The first semester is about writing mostly, and the second semester is mostly about spoken communication. We are kind of looking at maybe revising these things. I don't know if we'll do it this year, but these might be revised in the future. So it might only be like one credit hour course, and we munge the 2 together or something. I don't know. We're talking about if we want to change it or not. You're also going to be busy because besides classes and doing the seminar stuff, you have to focus on your job hunt. Even if you are a junior, you need to be looking for an internship the following year. And if you are a senior or a master's student, I guess I don't know what first year master's student or junior, then you will be looking for an internship. And if you're closer to graduation, you'll be looking for a full-time job on your way out. And this takes a surprising amount of time. It really does. It's not easy. So it's almost like having like a part-time job on the side. You got to keep track of everything you applied, look for jobs, make sure your resume is good, send out cover letters, do interviews, all that stuff. So the other requirement, did I mention this before? The job fair. The job fair is a program-wide meeting. They come here to Washington. It's down at the Washington Hilton is where it's been recently. It's pretty convenient. It's not bad for us. Um, and you have to go to the job fair. You have to go to the job fair unless you have a job completely done, like your contract completely signed. Okay? So everybody goes to the job fair. I'm telling you now because some of you are going to get into the program and in about a year from now, or maybe 2 years from now, when you're about to graduate, go, do I have to go to the job fair? And what am I going to tell you? I'm going to tell you the day you walked in and ate my cupcakes, you were committing to going to the job fair. Okay? So I'm just telling you, I've done this a while. So job fair is no big deal. It's 1.5 days. You go the afternoon of one day, they have speeches and dinner and stuff like that. And then the next day, you go and they have like a big expo area and they have tables with recruiters from federal agencies. It's varied widely how many are there. During COVID, it was only like 80. Well, during COVID, they did one online, but then like after that, it was like 80. I think this year there were like 110 different agencies and they all have booths and they want to hire you very much. One quick note about hiring. I'm just going to say scholarship for student graduates are in very high demand. Like people in government want you. It's been a number of years, but they did a survey a while ago and they asked federal agencies, where do you expect to hire your cybersecurity force from? And the sum of the answers across all agencies was like 3 times the number of students the program actually produces. Okay, like there was way more demand than there was supply. The number of schools has gone up, so maybe the supply has increased some, but they really, really, really want it. That is, if you are in the Scholarship for Service program, you fall into a special hiring category. Government agencies normally have a very prolonged hiring process. The process for SFS scholarship students is wicked fast. Like like people, this doesn't always happen, but people go to the job fair. Sometimes they get a job interview at the job fair, and sometimes they get a job offer at the job fair. So we've had students who walked in at 9 in the morning and by lunchtime had a job offer. Okay, that doesn't happen in other government jobs. So it's very, very fast. The other thing people worry about is I told you that if you don't do your government service, it turns into a loan. Nobody wants a loan. Sometimes people worry about finding a job. This whole thing just sort of points to there's a demand, and if you do your work and look for a job, you will find a job. We have not had any student who has been unable to find a job. I will mention also that the longer it gets, like there's a little grace period after you graduate, um, and the longer towards the end of the grace period, the more the OPM, the Office of Personal Management, is going, how about this job? How about this job? So they will find a job for you. It may not be the job you want, but they will help you find a job. All right, another thing. You can work outside the program, that's allowed, but we want to approve it. Like we have to approve where you're working. And the point of this is that we're giving you this large stipend and it should be enough to live off of and, relatively comfortably actually, and just spend all your time being a student. What we want to see in jobs is jobs that advance your career prospects, right? Like if you're going to be getting work, we would much rather see you in a cybersecurity internship or position where you're getting skills that will help you get a job. So we have to approve that a little bit. And another note, this is not as applicable, I'm going to tell you why this exists. In the past, in this program, places that you were allowed to work are somewhat limited, and they've made them more limited. In the past, you could work at places called FFRDCs, Federally Funded Research and Development Centers. Anybody heard of MITRE? Yeah. MITRE used to suck up all of the graduates from this program. And Congress got mad about it. And Congress got mad about it because Congress passed this bill saying, hey, we want to train people to be cyber defenders to go out and help our agencies. We don't want to train people to go work at MITRE, right? MITRE was more attractive because you didn't need a security clearance and they paid more. So a lot of people went there. So Congress changed the law a little bit. Oh, and other places you can work, national labs, state and local government. It's changed now, okay? Because all the students were going to MITRE. Congress changed the law so that 80% of the graduates from the program had to go to a federal executive branch job. I can give you a list of the federal executive branch, not off the top of my head, but I have a printed one somewhere. Because of this, you should not expect to get a job outside of the federal executive branch, like at all. Just don't do it. Like our program goal is just prohibiting applying to non-federal branch employment. Don't even think about it. Right. The reason for this is, and I got to say it sucks because before this law, we were sending the people places like Government Affairs, Government Accountability Office, GAO, which was totally a cool place to work, but it's like a legislative branch office because it's associated with Congress, so it doesn't count as federal. So it sort of sucks. The reason we do this is because remember I told you that we get renewed every once in a while. Not only do our students have to get placed, they have to get placed in federal executive branch. And so we just steer everyone there. In rare occasions, when people are not able to get a federal executive branch job, we will consider letting them go to the other ones. So we're keeping our percentage high for that. Applications are open, I think, until February 23rd. I didn't look, but you can go to look up the Cyber Fellows Georgetown website. You click on there. It's open 23rd. I'll just tell you there is no point in rushing to apply early. Like for some reason, like the day I open applications, I have like 10 applications, and then about half of them have a mistake in them, and then they're like, oh, I need to fix my mistake. But just take your time and do it right, because we don't even look at them until after February 23rd. Like I look every once in a while just to make sure the application system isn't broken or something, but I don't read anything until after the application period is ended. So take your time, but get it in. Application is pretty easy. Fill out an online form. It's literally a Google Doc. It's just collecting information we need about you. Name, what you're looking to support, for how long, your educational background, and then some references. When I say references, these are people who are like professors or past bosses or something like that who can attest to your skill and wonderfulness. When you submit references, do not go to these people. You can ask them if there will be a reference for you, but you don't need to tell them to send us letters in advance, okay? Like you just give us their contact information, and if you are a competitive candidate, then we will contact your references. If everybody sends all the references all the time, it becomes unmanageable. You'll need to have a resume or CV that shows your background, and you'll need to have at least unofficial transcripts. Like it's a form upload, so we're not verifying signatures or anything, but we could just to check your grades. If you are accepted and you're not coming from Georgetown, we're able to check your Georgetown official grades internally because you give us permission to during the application process. If you're coming from outside, we will ask for official transcripts just to make sure you're not scamming us or something like that, okay? And then important, a statement about why you're committed to government. So all of these last three things go together, like your resume, CV, your statement, and like your unofficial transcripts, all in one single PDF document. You can combine them together and upload them. And that's the application process. And what we'll do is we read through those. We come up with a list of first round list of candidates to interview, and then we interview people. And when we interview people, there will be like 3 to 4 people doing interviews, and you will have probably between 2 and 3 interviews, because rather than doing a panel interview, it's just we're all professors and our schedules all don't align. So rather than doing like one panel interview, we all like have Zoom interviews or sometimes in-person interviews. But you have to interview several times with several different people. Okay. And then if everything goes well, then we would let you know if you're accepted to the scholarship in time before you have to commit to a program in April. If you're already a current student, this doesn't matter, but if you're applying for a graduate program, it's nice to know before you accept the program if you will be able to get funding for it or not. So we let people know in time for that. Though I have to say, if you're applying for a graduate program and you get the scholarship, we cannot actually pay the deposit because your funding doesn't start until like August, so like that. All right, the important question we often get is what do we look for in applicants? We look for really 3 things, 2 most important and 1 kind of not unimportant. Academic success, like we don't want to fund somebody who's going to not succeed in their program. If you don't succeed in your program and you get kicked out of the Georgetown, then it turns into a loan. And as I've talked about, that's bad for everybody. So we just want to know that you're going to succeed in the program. Doesn't mean you have to be the topmost scholar, means you have to succeed. We want to understand like why you want to go into government. If you want to go into government because you're like, I want the money, that makes you less interesting than somebody who says, look, you know, I've really wanted to go into government, because of this, this, and this, or I'm really interested in this because we know that you are more interested in actually getting into government and honestly staying into government, right? We like the whole point of this program through Congress isn't to get people in government for a year or two. It's to get them like in the door so that they get interested and stay as a career. So we're looking for people who are more likely, have interests that make them more likely to stay for a while. And then this is important, but not entirely mandatory, which is the ability to get a security clearance. Now, security clearances are not needed for every single job that you would be eligible for. There's a lot of jobs that don't require a security clearance, but we need to be able to place students in jobs. And you have a much wider selection of jobs if you're able to have a security clearance. Does that make sense? And so we look for people who are more likely to have a security clearance. If you are not familiar with the security clearance process, and I imagine most of you are not, there's a few things that they look for that cause problems. One is past criminal conduct. That doesn't often occur for Georgetown students. The more problematic ones are recent drug use, including pot, annoyingly, because like it's one of these things that is legal in very, very many states, but not legal federally. So the federal government frowns on this for sure. Um, the other thing that they don't like is very significant foreign contacts. When I say significant foreign contacts, romantic relationship with a foreigner, foreign family, you spend a lot of time overseas visiting people, stuff like that. If you have kind of incidental ones like, you have cousins who live in Canada or Britain or something like that, probably they won't worry about that, but they're looking for really close and continuing contacts with foreigners. Now, let me just say none of these things are exclusionary. Like people get security clearances with some or all of these things all the time. But there are things that cause a little bit more concern and cause them to go deeper through the security clearance process. So sometimes it ends up taking a long time. So our goal in the whole admissions process is this. We want to find people who are going to succeed in school and then go and work in government and hopefully make a career out of it, right? Like get skills to go work in government. And this is really what we try to assess in the application process. That's pretty much it. Okay. So let me answer one common question before we get to the questions that you all ask, which is what makes a strong application? What do you all think makes a strong application? Someone who's going to succeed academically and has a clear motivation to work in government, right? That makes a strong application. Exactly the thing that I said before. There's no secret background stuff or anything like that. This is literally what we're looking for. Okay. All right. So I have done all the talking and hopefully I've answered some or all of the questions you have, but I would be happy to answer any other questions you had at this time. Yes.
For recommenders,
Uh-huh.
is it better if they're like a CS professor or can they kind of be
So the question was for recommenders, do they have to be a professor? They can be anyone. They can be anyone. I mean, somebody who knows you well, but isn't like your parents is probably better, right? Somebody who's seen you in a professional or academic setting and is able to attest to your academic skills or your desire and capability of being in government would be my answer. Yes?
now that you're supporting students who are working full time,
Mhm.
are people who are in this program able to like get a job and start paying back with their
Okay. So the question was, if we're supporting people who are working full time, can people get a job and start having it count towards repaying the scholarship? And the answer is no. You are able to get a job, and in fact, you can get a government job. But so the way it works is like when you join the program, like you sign a whole bunch of documents. And then in the documents, it says that if you get a job, it doesn't count until you have graduated. So you can get a job and start working, but that time doesn't count towards your obligation until you graduate. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes, we do support people who do multiple academic programs. So we have supported people in the past, like computer science students who do a senior year and then the accelerated masters. We've also supported people who have like done a senior year and decided the master's wasn't for them, and that was okay too. Like we've supported, I think, STIA students who go into the SSP program as well. like STIA students can go into SSP. I think there's some sort of accelerated thing for that as well. So we've supported that. Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, okay. So for budget reasons, if that is what you think you want to do, I would much rather you prefer to tell me that up front. Because if we accept you, we will accept you for like the senior year and the master's program. And that's fine because now our budget is planned. If we accept you for your senior year and then you say, oh, now I want the master's program as well, you will have to reapply because we will have budgeted the money differently. So it's easier for us to like budget money for you and you say, I don't want it, than it is for you to say, oh, now I want more money. And we'll be like, well, we didn't plan for that. So, yes.
So, scholarship.
Okay. So the scholarship begins, yes, in the fall. S- It does not. So if you join the program, you will be admitted to start in fall of 2025. We cannot cover it right now. So because of the way the budget works is we do one round of admissions a year and then it starts in the thing. We also typically do not cover summer classes. Um, and that's because most of the time if you're in the summer, you're supposed to be doing your internship instead of taking summer classes. So I'm sorry, that's sort of like bad news that we only do this once a year. The difficulty is that there's not very many of us, and we've tried doing 2 rounds of applications, and it's just a lot of work. And then the other thing is that it's like harder to budget because like if we take like sometimes we get like a really big applicant pool in the fall and we want to take more people, and then like do we save spots for the spring? Not know many how many applicants. So it's just worked out to do this. So if in your position, what you might want to do is if you are able to finish, is you might not want to take summer and then take 2 semesters. And you would probably take 3 classes in the fall and 1 in the spring, and we would work out the lighter load, and it would give you time to do job search in the spring. That's what I'd recommend. You're welcome. Yeah. We do not consider it's a merit-based scholarship, but like I said, we do consider like like we do in the final balance of everything. If we had 2 candidates who were completely identical and one was going to be able to go to Georgetown and one was not, we would probably let the student in who was not. Does that make sense? But it is not part of our thing. And honestly, I say we make that balance like that. It has never happened that we look at it and have like 2 students we want to admit both and then we admit one based on that. One of the things about this program is we have a pot of money and we have a plan for spending, right? But we're able to rearrange things a little bit. So sometimes we get an applicant pool where there are people who are really exceptional and we want to admit more. And what we'll do is we'll steal money from a future year and we'll just say, okay, next year we'll only admit 6 instead of 7 and we'll bring people in. And then some years we have applicant pool that's like smaller and then like we were planning on admitting 7 and we admit 6 because the there was like a big quality difference between the first 6 and the 7th person, and we sort of like, we can probably get someone better next year. So we sort of rearranged things a little bit. That's why at the beginning I was saying that we're expecting to admit a certain number of students, but it really depends on the applicant pool. And then it depends, like we have money, and some programs are more expensive than others. In the past, we submitted law students, and law students are super expensive. They're like 2 normal students. So if we admit a law student, that means we have to like be a little bit more careful with our finances. Actually, they're not twice as expensive, but they're pretty expensive. Yeah.
Can you afford for 3 semesters? Like if I have a month
Yes,
in
absolutely. Hmm. Yeah, and if you did 3 semesters, you'd have like a year and a half. You'd have to work
December,
for it like 18 months when you graduated.
it
So
doesn't round up to 2 years. It would just be
I believe so. I'd have to check for sure. I know one semester rounds up to a year. So, but- anything else? Well, I hope this is interesting to you. I hope that if you're interested, you will apply. Tell your friends about it or don't, because that would be the horribly competitive thing to do. But there's enough money to go around that. I think so. No, you don't have to clap. Thank you, though. Thanks for coming. See you later. Grab a cupcake if you haven't had one. They're really good.